Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Deviant History. This terrifying story took place in the Grodno area, which is now a part of Belarus. But actually, it was caused by something that took place thousands of miles away. You see, Muslim pilgrims traveled to Mecca, as they have done for centuries. This time, the pilgrims from Central Asia were going home after visiting the sacred places of Arabia. They left Mecca for Jeddah, and then went to Bombay by ship. That was the routine route of the pilgrims. From Bombay, they rode to Delhi, then Kabul. Crossing the Afghan border at Amu Darya River, they came to their homeland. But in 1846, something else came with them. The outbreak in the Ganges Valley turned into the third cholera pandemic. The pilgrims were struck soon and brought the infection to Central Asia. From there, it traveled with local merchants and was transferred to Russia. In this way, cholera finally reached the Belarussian area. The small village of Okanovichi is located 110 miles from the city of Grodno. 3/4 of the local population died of cholera by the summer of 1855. The people felt hopeless. They began practicing some ancient rituals to stop the death toll, but even those did not really work. One night, a 70-year-old woman from Okanovichi named Lucia woke up sick. She felt that the cholera had finally come to her. Being Christian, Lucia decided to visit the church, although she was sick and pretty weak. She left her village in the sunny morning of August 1st, 1855. The church was only a few miles from her home in a neighboring larger village. It was hard for her, but Lucia arrived at the church several hours after she started. She fell on her knees and prayed enthusiastically to the icons. After being blessed by the church priest, she began the long walk back. The summer heat did not help the tired, sick woman. She had to stop often, sitting down on the grass to rest. Lucia made it halfway to her home when she saw a carriage approaching. It was carrying people from her home village. They were going to the local cemetery to bury their dead children. There were 2 little coffins in the carriage. The sad parents were accompanied by several persons from the village. Lucia knew them all. They were the policeman, doctor, 4 local farmers, and 1 farmer's wife. The farmer's wife carried an icon to pray for the children's souls. In reality, their goal was not just praying and burying the children. Their goal was stopping the deadly pandemic. An extremely tired Lucia was sitting at the roadside when the doctor and the policeman came up to her. They asked her to pray for the children too. The people promised to give her a ride home after that. Lucia must have suspected something, because she refused and said she felt too bad to make the unexpected trip. Then the men The men picked her up and put her in the carriage and seated her next to the coffins. Twice Lucia jumped out, but was too weak to run. Both times she was brought back to the carriage.
Да не переживайте вы так,
The
Lucia
men tried to
Martina.
calm her
Все
down.
будет хорошо.
Their words were soothing, but they did not help. Lucia argued with them that she needed to go home and rest. The last time she tried to leave was when the carriage stopped at the cemetery gates. Lucia was weakened even more by that time. She crawled on her knees to the cooler, sandy, shady woods. But soon the woman was found there by the doctor and carried back to the carriage, despite her protests. They put the small coffins into the grave. The farmer's wife started reading. It was not a prayer. It was a chant. It was an incantation. The doctor suddenly took Lucia and threw her into the grave with the coffins. The farmers began throwing soil on the screaming woman. In the desperate situation, Lucia grabbed the doctor, and he slid down into the pit with her. One of the farmers offered to bury the doctor as well, just to make sure the ritual was successful. But the doctor was not going to die. He jumped on the coffins and was pulled out by his friend, the policeman. Lucia was left in the grave with the doctor's torn jacket. She cursed everybody there until she was buried alive. The crime was obvious, and the culprits could not keep the horrible secret. Soon rumors spread that the pandemic was going to decline quickly, magically. Meanwhile, the news reached St. Petersburg, the Russian capital city. The authorities began investigation in the Grodno district. Locals continued talking that the cholera was stopped due to the ancient ritual of human sacrifice. Villagers all around the Grodno district said the ritual was known there before, but practiced just in a few cases when the situation looked desperate. Most of them did not even know Lucia, but were informed that a female had been sacrificed to stop the pandemic. Finally, police found the doctor and arrested him. He was the only person accused. The parents of the buried children were excused as they were considered traumatized by their loss. The court considered that they did not take part in the sacrifice and were not able to stop the ritual. The other people were not accused at all because they died of cholera by that time. The persons had likely been infected by Lucia as well as cursed by her. At first, the court sentenced the doctor to 12 years of forced labor in the Siberian mines. But the sentence was moderated since the doctor had 4 little children. His sincere confession might have helped him too. He told everything that happened in detail and did not deny his leading role in the ritual. The grave was still shaking and moaning when we left the cemetery, he said. Of course, meaning that Lucia remained alive under the soil, at least for a little while. The court might have taken into consideration that Lucia was already sick and would likely have died in a few days anyway, although this point can hardly be proven by documents. and the cholera epidemic did, eventually, come to an end. The doctor was released from jail in October of 1856. He was able to go home, but had to stay under the police supervision for 12 years. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Deviant History. If you liked it, please click like, and please subscribe. We will see you next week for another story.
Ooh.